Hi, my name is Eleanor Tatum, and I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News. The coronavirus crisis has brought serious distress to local economies and advertising along with them. The New York Amsterdam News has partnered with the Local Media Association during this unprecedented crisis. Help us continue our important work in chronicling the life of Black New Yorkers, and consider making a donation to the COVID-19 Local News Fund today. Go to givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Again, that is givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Thank you and stay safe.
It's Thursday, August 20th, and welcome to the New York Amsterdam News Podcast. I'm Cyril Josh Barker. On this week's episode, my guest is AM News senior writer Herb Boyd, who's with me to recap the Democratic National Convention and discuss the historic selection of U.S. Senator Kamala Harris as Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's running mate. We're also discussing the upcoming general election and the efforts by the Trump administration to sway the election in his favor.
We need more than a victory on November 3rd. We need a mandate that proves that the past few years do not represent who we are or who we aspire to be. Joe likes to say that character is on the ballot, and it's true. When he saw what happened in Charlottesville 3 years ago today, he knew we were in a battle for the soul of our nation. And together with your help, that's a battle we will win. Earlier this year, I said I'd do whatever Joe asked me to do. And so now I'm asking you to do the same. So visit joebiden.com to get involved in this campaign and vote, because electing Joe Biden is just the start of the work ahead of us.
That was U.S. Senator Kamala Harris on August 11th when she was announced as Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's running mate for the 2020 election. Harris is the first African-American and third female vice presidential running mate on a major party ticket. This week, the Democratic National Convention was held in Milwaukee and across the nation virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden made his case at the convention, informing voters he's got what it takes to deal with the nation's three major issues right now: the COVID-19 pandemic, race relations in America, and the economy. And AM News senior writer Herb Boyd is with me to break all of this down, so let's get into it. Herb, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you.
All right. Well, listen, history made, history going on right before our eyes at the Democratic National Convention. I just want to let everybody know that this episode was recorded on the day after Kamala Harris delivered her speech to accept the Democratic Party's nomination to be the vice presidential candidate, I should say. And so that I just want to let everybody know that. But first and foremost, what are your thoughts about Kamala Harris being nominated as the first African-American vice presidential candidate for a major party?
My goodness. Well, I think it's a monumental and a historic step in the right direction. And obviously, as Dr. King reminded us so often, is that in terms of the American society and the advance of minorities, particularly of African-American people, it's always done incrementally. It's done of small steps, not giant steps. There's small steps that are taken. You go back to 2008 with the election, the phenomenon that Barack Obama brought. I mean, the enthusiasm was just crazy. And the momentum that was pushed from the bottom, from African Americans who have been denied an opportunity like this, year in and year out. 400 years, you see. So anyway, the getting her in that position, obviously it's historic, it's monumental, it's significant, and it's a step in the right direction. A lot of people are concerned that obviously she's not an African American in the true sense of the word. She has the Indian, Jamaican heritage and everything, and so those concerns about that are well, when are we going to get a pure African American, someone who has a genealogy that can be traced directly back to the slave society in this country? Well, I think that's going to have to wait a little bit for that, because as Dr. King suggested, the small steps are taken. You got Obama, now you got Kamala. Maybe in another generation, I hope not that long, that you'll have someone who is more reflective, more representative of the history of our legacy and our struggle against, enslavement in this country. Nonetheless, I thought that her speech last night was significant because it was consistent with what she had said when she was chosen. It didn't divert too much from that. It stayed pretty much on track. Of course, Trump continues to be the central focus there, as well he should be, and what she plans to do about it, and pointing out just how absolutely inadequate he's been. And then, of course, you had the other speakers who confirmed and underscored that particular concern. So we have to wait now, Josh, and see exactly what happens. You got to win this election, and that's not a done deal. You got a whole lot of steps to be taken before. We got, 76 days, 75, 76 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, before the election. All the polls are good, although there's a couple of polls out there suggesting that his base is steady and he'll do well there. But I think what Hillary said last night is said, be careful and be on the alert and ever vigilant, because she won the election by 3 million votes.
Absolutely, yeah.
But she lost because of the Electoral College. So we still got that concern in the battleground state. So it's looking pretty good for Biden.
Yeah. Me personally, you and I have been talking on a couple of other shows that are on the radio and have had conversations about Kamala Harris. Me personally, I think it was a good pick. I think it was a very timely pick. I will say that. With the climate of America right now, and I said this previously, I think that it would have been unintelligent for him to not pick a black woman right now because of all the momentum that's going on and the change that people want. But, her speech last night was very nice. It was very personalized. That's one thing I will say. You see that she shouted out Alpha Kappa Alpha and the Divine Nine and her HBCU family. And that includes me because I went to a black school. And then, of course, my mother, who's an Alpha Kappa Alpha, they heard that and just started celebrating. So it's a very, very momentous occasion. But also she used a word last night that I even had to Google, and she said, my chittas, she said when she was describing her family, and I had to look that up because I'm like, well, what is that? And, that word is a word in the East Asian culture that stands for aunts. And so she was doing that. So even down to even that one word, she was able to resonate with, us, East Asians, because they heard that word and they felt so connected. So just all around the board last night was something definitely that I watched. I mean, I think I was asleep and a buzz came on my phone. I said, oh my God, I have to watch this speech to see what she's going to say. And it was definitely quite a momentous occasion. Let's talk about this convention, because this Democratic National Convention is very different from 2016. And let me just say that I actually went to the 2016 Democratic Convention in Philadelphia in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was was running. And it was a very different scene, and it was a very divided scene. I remember, they were announcing that Hillary Clinton had got the nomination after the roll calls, and there were people who stormed out of the arena, I should say, and were protesting because they wanted Bernie Sanders. It was a very divided Democratic Party in 2016, and so now and now with COVID-19, it's a very different convention because we're seeing about 2 or 3 hours a night of session and speeches and very good entertainment as well, might I add. And we're also seeing in the daytime, caucus meetings happening with different groups all across the board. What's your take on this convention?
I think one of the things about this here virtual thing, it steals a lot of the energy and enthusiasm, the interactivity between speaker and the audience, the congregation. I mean, that's like missing in so many facets now of American life, if not globally, where people don't have that opportunity to really to react to each other in a very personal and intimate and close way. So, but a virtual thing, I mean, in as much as you can have a connection and really appeal to your constituents out there, it can be very effective. Some of the platforms are getting a lot better in terms of delivering that without the disruptions, without the interference. And so I thought it went well from a technological standpoint. From a technical standpoint, it went very well. The all recorded speeches, I mean, some of those was pretty pat. we knew exactly what each was going to say. I think the most surprising thing coming out of last night's thing was the fact that former President Obama actually mentioned Donald Trump's name. He had pretty much stayed away from that in terms of his reactions to all the insults and the attempts to tear his legacy apart that Trump has done almost with each tweet. So it was good to hear him mention, at least I think on 3 occasions, he mentioned Donald Trump very specifically, particularly when he said he does not have the capability, the talent, he doesn't have the character, integrity, to rule as a president, to run this country. He can't do it. He doesn't have it in his makeup. So it was good to hear him say very specifically his concerns about the Trump administration and mentioning his name. Even his wife, Michelle, did a good job of that.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, she did a good job too of really lacerating him. But I think overall, the convention has gone fairly well, pretty much as intended. And the numbers that came in, the whole roll call situation was kind of unique because you get a chance to get, again, the mixture of the kind of diversity that's represented in the Democratic Party. So democracy is at stake here. So we have to go ahead, and particularly young people, the progressives, the millennials, they're going to have to turn out in full force because you can't take anything from granted, and even he threatening to not be removed from office by using all kind of gambits, including U.S. Postal Service, So we got a lot of challenges in front of us, Josh.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier, but I was just going to say that Michelle Obama certainly hit the nail on the head on the first night of the convention with her speech. It was a very powerful speech, I thought. It was very, even though it was taped, it was, there was, so what, it was still made a splash. It was still good. And she definitely made her case for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, both of them. I was watching, and one of the commentators was saying, every time Trump tweets and says something, it's kind of like, well, you're making our case because you're doing exactly what we say you're doing. And so again, I just think that Michelle Obama did such a great job with that speech. One of the things I will say about this convention, there's a lot of inclusiveness. You're seeing all types of people, different backgrounds, different races, different countries. And I have a suspicion you're probably not going to be seeing that next week at the Republican National Convention, here, there. But I do want to address the young people. And I said this before again on some of the other shows that we do. And it's the fact that young people are woke. They use that, we use that term woke. I'm not going to say they because I'm only 37, so I'll say it. I'm woke. And so, but the fact of the matter is that they know that just because we've seen a black person in the White House, that's not news to us. And so it's going to take a little bit more, I think, on the Democratic Party's end to really convince young black voters to turn out, because there are a lot of factors coming into play, like Kanye West's situation going on, different messages. If you haven't seen on the internet, Donald Trump has really kind of bombarded the advertising. I mean, I was looking at YouTube, and I'm under the impression that a lot of the ads that we see online are based on algorithms from things that we've seen in the past or things that we visit online. And so when I went to YouTube and I just see all these ads for Donald Trump, videos for Donald Trump, and slamming Joe Biden, it's like, wow, he's really taking this quite seriously, because it's quite obvious that he is nervous. And I do want to talk to you about that. We're seeing all types of news happening with the U.S. Postal Service holding up things. We're seeing dismantled sorting machines. Now we're seeing a decision now from the postmaster, who was a major Trump donor, that he's going to hold off on things. But the damage, they say, has already been done. What are your thoughts on the Postal Service and Donald Trump trying to sway the vote in his favor using these tactics?
Well, I think it's an indication that he sees the handwriting is on the wall. And these are moves of desperation. And we have to understand that if he's a master of anything, it's distraction. So I guess he's trying to say to his base, be prepared because they're going to steal this election from us. So that scenario is set in place. Talking about the U.S. Postal Service, the whole mail-in vote is fraudulent. So he's already dismissed it, denounced it before it happens. So it's a kind of preparatory thing. This is what's called the preemptive strike. To make sure that his base is fully woke, you might say. So one of the things about all of this is that the whole U.S. Postal Service is just symptomatic and emblematic of some of the concerns we have about his administration. I mean, what if he just refuses to leave the White House?
Exactly.
We met with another dilemma in terms of how we get this guy out of here. We need a crowbar to get him out of the Oval Office. It was kind of interesting to see while Obama was speaking last night, and you have the captions, coming in, and we're going to have to really improve the captions quite a bit. It's not up to speed, because when he said Oval Office on the screen, it said Evil Office.
Oh,
so it was almost consistent with the Trump administration. Many people see him as a personification of evil.
Oh.
So anyway, I think things about this is that so much has to be reckoned with, and we've talked about this, Josh, on many occasions in terms of voter suppression, and how important that is, going in, and particularly the battleground states. When you look at Wisconsin, and you look at Pennsylvania and Florida, Ohio, and even Arizona, and where he's, I guess, headed for Arizona or somewhere out west, and making sure he shore up that base. And those ads you're talking about on YouTube, again, is indicative of this kind of, this thing is going down to the finish, and what we're going to do, and where we're putting our money, and what's happening with the Biden's response to that. I think one of the things that Biden is going to have to do, and it was not reflective at all, and one of the concerns I have is the Latino or Latinx or the Mexican American representation there. They had a few people there, but none of the main figures. Where's it was one woman, I'm sure, from the mayor from out west, but for the most part, where is the Julian and Joaquin Castro? Those kind of individuals should be in the mix, and because the Latino vote is a very huge block, it could be decisive. That block, along with independents, and there's a lot of those who apparently are undecided yet. So you have to begin to appeal to them, and also to hold your progressives steady.
Yeah.
So they don't say, I'm not going to show up, or just generally not be enthusiastic and out there and energized in terms on the campaign trail. So we got a lot of concerns out there that the DNC is going to have to reckon with to assure that we remove, or they remove, Trump from that Oval Office or evil office.
Absolutely. And it's so, again, you're hitting the nail on the head, because it's so relevant that they show people who have been, so 2016, a lot of people were turned off from the Democratic Party because of Hillary Clinton's nomination. And I think the Democratic Party is really going to have to try and gain back those voters. However, I think that with the way that we've seen things over the last 4 years, there's a term that Imhotep Gary Bird, Herb and I both do radio, on the weekends mostly with Imhotep Gary Bird on WBLS and WBAI, and he uses the term anybody but Trump, ABT. And so, a lot of people are going to be going to the ballot box doing that. One thing I wanted to ask you in detail that I'm actually thinking about exploring, in the Amsterdam News with a story possibly is, Kamala Harris is basically, she's going to be basically carrying this election because of her appeal to so many people. I mean, she's a black woman, she's an Asian American woman, and so she has a lot of momentum and ground and support on that end. But she also has support from specific groups, and I was just using the examples. She shouted out Alpha Kappa Alpha, she shouted out the HBCUs and the Divine Nine. Could these, and also using the Indian dialect that she used to describe, that one word that I was telling you about earlier. Could these groups, could like Alpha Kappa Alpha, because my mother's an AKA, and I had a conversation with her the day that Kamala Harris was chosen to be the VP pick. I said, what's going on? Like, are you guys going to be mobilizing? And she said, oh yeah, we're already getting to work. We're donating. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're making individual donations. We're mobilizing. Could groups like Alpha Kappa Alpha, could HBCU alums, could all these groups come together and really make a powerful statement and do the groundwork to get Kamala Harris in office?
They're going to have to. They should have their marching orders on that. And I think you're absolutely right, though, Josh, in terms of the appeal to various communities that she has. I mean, even during the primaries, you can see the number of black women who were very excited about her run. Whenever they concluded one of those debates, you saw the cameras went to her and see the cluster of people around her. The majority were black women. So she had them pretty much in the pocket to, right during the campaign, during her run for the presidency. And I think that's one of the part of the processes in terms of her selection, is that she had, in effect, been vetted by a national audience. They had seen what she could do. They saw that prosecutorial edge that she has always represented, going all the way back to her California days. So she had a number of those things going for her. But now, you have also the immigrants. We were talking to a couple of other friends of ours from Haiti and Jamaica. They feel very good that she begins to represent some of the cultures out of the Caribbean and out of Central America. So those are other decisive elements, in play. But I think the independents and making sure you keep the progressives there, because, Bernie, and Bernie, I thought, said it very well about the Trump administration to kind of remark on his comments, is that talked about the whole Nero who was fiddling while Rome burned, and that Trump was golfing. So I thought that was a nice little sharp hit. But at the same time, he's going to have to shore up his following and make sure that they turn out to the voting booths, because they showed a lot of energy in the street. I'm very, very optimistic in terms of the unrest that's going on in this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly the representation there, which is a lot. People ask us to compare, often, Josh, they ask us to compare the current BLM, with the civil rights movement and everything. And I say, well, there's one markedly distinct thing or difference, is that the number of white people out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, brother. So we're very hopeful that that particular kind of energy, the concern with the criminal justice system, concern with the systemic racism and police brutality, the whole concern about reforming the police departments across this country, and making sure that they're just not creating all these crimes with impunity. So I think those are good signs out there coming from young people, because they represent the mass of the folks who have been going on and on and on. I see the Breonna Taylor thing. It's kind of like 12, 13 weeks now.
Yeah. One of the things, three things I do want to say. Well, I'm sorry, let me go back. I'd say the three probably top issues right now that are concerning the U.S. that everybody's looking for in leadership in this country. There are three issues, and that is one, COVID-19 obviously is a main issue right now that everybody's concerned about. The race relations, which is what you were just talking about, and also the economy. People are desperate to get back to work. People are desperate to start being able to make income again, and those who are not, there needs to be a solution for them. These three important issues have kind of become the centerpiece of the Democratic National Convention, and I'm sure will probably next week be the centerpiece for the Republican National Convention. What other issues do you think that people are concerned about right now besides those three? Because, again, those are the three things that people are thinking about right now, and they're shaping the election. But what are some other things that people are also concerned about right now?
Well, I think you pretty much have, if you look at the intersection of those three issues, they kind of embody just about all of the others, because you can see the ramifications and the kind of tentacles that reach out from each of them across the board. Because when you say that employment and education, economic opportunity, the three E's out there, Those have always been basic concerns in this country, no matter what's going on. Now you have, it's exacerbated by the pandemic, has put a whole different kind of edge on it, to say nothing of the kind of protest, the unrest in this country that stems from the May 25th killing of George Floyd. All of these things here taken together, we have a very, very volatile situation in this country. And then, of course, not having the leadership, having someone in power in this country who are making decisions that have impact on all of our lives. Don't forget the environment, the other E. The environment is very, it's in danger because he's making moves there in so many ways that jeopardize not only the people in this country, but the whole globe. Because global warming, which of course he says is a hoax, he's denied that all along, along with his whole birther thing and even with his attacks on Kamala, that she may not be qualified for office and she's not an African, she was not born in this country and all that stuff. So those things have popped up. So, but I think the environment, what's happening, the promises he made in dealing with the infrastructure in this country have never been realized. And so that I was good to see that $600 million is going to be set aside for the residents of Flint because of going back to 2014 when they had that very bad water situation, the Flint crisis, where they began to take water out of the Flint River as opposed to from Lake Huron, and all the children there that were affected and poisoned by this diseased water. So it's good to see that move is being made, but it has nothing at all to do with Trump, And another thing on that point, though, Josh, is that the down ballot, they always look at the top of the ticket with Kamala and
yeah, absolutely,
Biden, let's look at the down ballot.
Yes.
And the whole quest we need to take the Senate, because you can put Biden and Kamala in office, and you're still dealing with a McConnell. You're still dealing with the GOP-controlled Senate. There's very little you can get done in this country because they can torpedo and jam and filibuster everything.
Right.
So we're going to have to consider how we're going to take the Senate back. Of course, when you take the executive office, you're in a position to have some impact on the Supreme Court, because all of this could come down to where he refuses to leave the office. He'll kick the ball over to William Barr, the Attorney General. He'll say the whole elections have to do a redo on the elections because the irregularities in there. And here we go. The culture war then becomes something a little bit more disastrous, and moving toward a violent, upheaval in this country.
Absolutely, yeah.
Civil war.
Yeah.
Civil war could break out.
I have to agree, and I think that if Joe Biden does win, there definitely will be a fight to keep. I don't think Donald Trump will budge, and he'll definitely try to fight it because in his mind, of course, in his mind, he thinks he won the popular vote in 2016, even though he lost by 3 million. And so if he's that dazed and confused and unattached about even the results alone he didn't see from last time, because in his mind he's thinking, oh well, the only reason why I lost by 3 million was because voter fraud and fake votes and all this other stuff, which is what he's using now to which is what he's going to use now to try and fight the election if it doesn't work out in his favor. And of course he has a support for it. That's the other thing I think is interesting. You mentioned William Barr, and of course he has a whole host of supporters around the country who would come to his defense to try and agree with that. But that is yet to see, and hopefully we won't have to come to that point if he hopefully he'll take it seriously this time. I don't think he will, but we'll see. My last question for you is, we're seeing, the Democratic National Convention going on this week. However, next week, we're going to have the Republican National Convention. What do you think we'll be seeing? Because it's kind of going to be a clapback to the Democratic National Convention and everything that they're saying. Because as you can see, Donald Trump is watching every single night and tweeting at the same time, thinking about how he's going to come in for his attack on the Democratic Party during next week's Republican National Convention. What do you think we're going to see there?
We'll see more of the same in terms of the tweets coming from him. And of course, we have to be concerned about the kind of volatile mix. What he represents is, a combination of power and ignorance. And you know how lethal that can be. So we'll see a lot more of that spewed, as they move to North Carolina. And I think one of the concerns we have there is that he's talking about some 300 people will be in that audience. And, of course, whether they wear masks, whether they have social distancing, and some of them have already said they're going to defy all of that. So the whole QAnon situation where you're going to have this reaction coming from conspiracy elements of the social media, that's going to have like a platform. You got who the people are going to call in to speak, and what sectors do they represent? What kind of energy they're going to bring? All of that's important. But I think one of the things is that as we look at situation in this country in the electoral process, pretty much things are done at this point. Folks have made up their minds. It's just a small segment of the population, the electoral population, that's kind of undecided. And that's where you go for those. Thus far, his appeal has been to his base. He's just trying to hold his base together. That's why you can have him all these different kinds of policy moves from an international standpoint. Look at the whole situation with the Emirates, in terms of them coming aboard now and having some kind of negotiations, agreements with Israel, joining Egypt and Lebanon now. So all of those moves that on this chessboard that he's making out there to show his base, hey, look here, I'm still here. As Obama said, his administration, for the most part, has been an extension of The Apprentice. It's a second reality show. But of course, that reality show is supported almost by half the nation. So we have to be concerned about that. It's amazing that so many people would vote against their self-interest. But he banks on that. He plays to that. He's alerting them to that. The whole conspiracy theories that he put out there. So we have to contend with that. So what I can expect coming out of the Republican gathering there, it's no more than more of the same. Mm-hmm. But of course, you've got the headliner, and he'll be, hey, he's a drum major, of that Republican right. It's always been a dangerous tendency in this country, Josh. Mm. So get ready, baby.
And it's so interesting how both of these conventions are showing two different Americas. We're seeing two. It's almost like seeing two different countries in one place. It's so amazing. Well, listen, Herb, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We're definitely going to have you back soon for more recaps on this election. Thank you again.
Okay, baby. Bye-bye.
That concludes this week's podcast. You can pick up the latest edition of the New York Amsterdam News on newsstands and get updates online at amsterdamnews.com. You can also keep up with us on Facebook at NY Amsterdam News and follow us on Twitter at NYAmNews. I'm Cyril Josh Barker. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Tatum, and I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News. The coronavirus crisis has brought serious distress to local economies and advertising along with them. The New York Amsterdam News has partnered with the Local Media Association during this unprecedented crisis. Help us continue our important work in chronicling the life of Black New Yorkers, and consider making a donation to the COVID-19 Local News Fund today. Go to givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Again, that is givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Thank you and stay safe.